How many of you are aware of how cerebral and how locked into our minds this generation is? The generation of technology, a generation that's invested in science and reason and logic. And we've lost touch with our hearts. We've lost touch with perhaps the richest organ in our spiritual body, which enables us to connect with something transcendent, with a creator. Our minds are limited, our hearts are infinite. One of my illustrious predecessors, the Rebbe of Ropshitz, once asked this question on a pasuk in Parshas Truma. Daber al bnei Yisrael v'yichol Truma, speak to the children of Israel that they take Truma. Mi'eis kol isha asher yidvanu Levi, from every person whose heart is generous, moves them. Tikhu es Trumasi, you shall take my Truma. And he points out that it's redundant. Daber al Yisrael v'yichol Truma, take Truma. And then at the end of the pasuk, once again, Tikhu es Trumasi. Why again Tikhu es Trumasi? So he comments in his Zohar HaKodesh that there's a fundamental question. How is it possible that an infinite being should somehow find his way into a structure of any kind? No matter how big we would make the Beis HaMikdash, it would still be tiny. There's no way in which anything which is bounded, which is limited, which has finite qualities to it can encompass something which is boundless and infinite. How's it possible? We're going to make a Mishkan. How can you make a Mishkan? How's that going to work? So he says that when people came to make their contributions, that there were Chachmei Lev, there were the people who received these donations and these contributions. And when somebody gave their gold, their silver, their earrings, their cufflinks, whatever it was that they had to offer, their gold watches, that the Chachmei Lev were able to acknowledge the gift in a way which made them feel very, very good, that they had done something right. So they went home immediately and they looked for some other things which they could give, and they brought some new things, some things that they perhaps wouldn't have given otherwise. And this time the Chachmei Lev really were able to acknowledge this contribution as something which was profoundly meaningful. And then they were so lit up that they went back and they took heirlooms, things that were invaluable to them, things that they'd inherited from their Bubi, from their Zayda, from people who were dear to them, gifts from important people, and they brought everything. And this time the Chachmei Lev went out and they danced with them and they sang with them. They made such a celebration about it. These people went back to see if there was anything else that they could possibly give to the Mishkan of the Rabbi Michel, and they could find nothing. And so they came back to the Chachmei Lev and they said, we wanted to give more, we have nothing left to give. So the Zohar HaKodesh says that it's in that infinite desire to give to the Ribono Shel Olam, to in some way be worthy of connecting with the Ribono Shel Olam, in that infinite yearning, that's where the Ribono Shel Olam can bring his Shekhinah to rest, not in the building, not in the walls, but in that yearning that fills every contribution, that Ein Sof, the Tshuka of Klal Yisrael to want to give to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he says that's the pasuk. And he puts in a little comma. Daber al bnei Yisrael v'yichol Truma. Speak to bnei Yisrael, let them bring to me Truma. Me'eis kol isha asher yidvenu. Stop. From every person whose heart gives them. Libay tichwestin mosi. Let him give me his heart. That's what I want. Libay tichwestin mosi. The Jewish heart is something that has all the room in the world for something divine. So we heard music, and the music enabled us to bypass our heads. It enabled us to go into something that wasn't locked into reason and to logic, and to go into that inexpressible, that infinite love and yearning and awe and reverence that each one of us owns. I heard a story which was so fascinating to me that I decided I needed to try to verify it. And I did my best to verify it. I still can't tell you that I know 1,000% that the story is in fact true, but I believe that I've done enough homework so that I can tell you that I think that the story is true. And it's a story about a town in Europe which was invaded by the Germans, and they rounded up all of the Jews in town. And the Polish inhabitants of this town stood by, a spectator. They were watching this slaughter, and the SS Gestapo said to the people in town, said, if there's anything that you see on any of these people that you want, take it now, because in a few minutes from now you won't be able to. So there were two women standing there, and they saw on one of the victims to be, they saw a fur coat. So they ran over and they ripped the fur coat off of this lady. And then the Nazis, Yimach Shemom Zichram, wiped out the entire town. The lady who took the fur coat had agreed with her neighbor. They had both agreed that they were going to either sell the coat, divide the money for the coat. Meanwhile, they felt something bulky in the coat, and they reached into the lining, and there was a newborn baby. So the woman said to her neighbor, she said, you know what? I have children. You don't have any children. You take the baby, I'll take the coat. And that was a good deal. She was happy. She had a child. She proceeded to raise the child. The child had a Yiddish cup, had a good mind, excelled in school, went on to the university, became a physician, became ultimately the head of a obstetric hospital. She married, she had children, and one day she learned that her husband and children were killed in a car crash. Shortly thereafter, as though that were not enough, she got word that her mother was dying. Her hospital was a considerable distance. She immediately set forth to this place where her mother lived, and her mother expired. She was there for the funeral. And after the funeral, the neighbor lady came over to her and said to her, I want to tell you something. This was not your natural mother. Your mother was Jewish. And she told her the story. So this doctor said to her, I don't believe you. She was my mother. So he said to her, okay, tell you what, go into the house where your mother lived and look in her jewelry drawer, and there you will find a locket, a necklace with a locket, and you'll open it up and you'll see there's Hebrew writing in it. You were wearing that locket when we found you in the coat. her mind was a storm. And she went into her mother's house and began looking in amongst the jewelry, and she found a necklace with the locket and opened it up, and there was writing that she didn't recognize. She didn't know what to do. And she walked around with this locket for several weeks, and then she was in an airport. And she saw some Hasidic-looking Jews. She knew they were Jewish. And she walked over to them and she gave them the locket and she said, "Can you tell me what it says in here?" So they read what it said in there. It said, Esther Bas Malka. So she said, "What does that mean?" Explained it. So she told them, these Hasidic Jews what had transpired. So they said to her, "You know what? You write our Rebbe, and he'll tell you what to do." They wrote the Rebbe, she wrote the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told her, I'm assuming it was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he told her she should go to Israel, that her story was so compelling that they would recognize her as a born Jew. She would not need any further conversion. So she set about taking care of that, and she went to Eretz Yisrael. They accepted her, and she was very taken with Eretz Yisrael. And eventually she married. She married a frum person, and she had a frum home. She had children. And one day, they wanted to take some takeout food. So they drove by, and her husband said, "I'll go pick up something, you wait in the car." They had to park some distance away because it was parked up. And he went into a restaurant called Zubaro. And if any of you know what happened, Zubaro exploded from a terrorist bomb. And she heard the explosion and she ran, and as a doctor, she began tending to the injured, and she found that her husband was killed. But she couldn't spend time with that because there were so many injured. So she went from person to see what she could do, what she could say, what she could salvage. And as she was moving amongst the wounded, an old man came. And he was hysterical. And he said, "Help me, my granddaughter is here. Help me, my granddaughter is here." So she saw that he really was extremely anxious. She said, "Okay, I'll help you look." And they found the granddaughter, and she was okay. She was injured a little bit, and she immediately began to attend to the wounds. And as she is working with this young girl, she stopped. And he said to her, "What's wrong? Why did you stop?" So she said, "That locket that the girl is wearing, that's very unusual." So he said, "Yes, it's very unusual. I made it myself." So she said, "Well, is there any other locket like it?" He said, "There once was." He said, "I had a daughter before the war, and I made the same locket for her. But she was killed in the war with her mother. And so she took out her locket, and she said to him, "This the locket that you made?" He said, "Yes, it must be." She opened it up. And she said, "Well, what was your wife's name?" She said, "Malka." "What was your daughter's name?" "Esther." So she said, "I am Esther Bas Malka." And so they were reunited. Even in her moment of grief, she found a new family. I'm telling you this story because what I want really to impress upon you is that the Beirei Olam, the father of Bnei Yisrael, has created a locket. It's very unusual. No other nation in the world has that locket. And it distinguishes us as his children. And if we recognize that we own that locket, it means that there is a relationship between us and him, which is not a casual relationship. It's a relationship which is us as his children. We recognize him and he recognizes us by that locket, which is that neshama, which is an expression of himself. He has invested himself in each one of us. And I think it's important that when you sit in class and you open up a Gemara or you open up a Shulchan Aruch, that you recognize that that is an opportunity for you to bond, that is a moment in which you are going to reconnect. It's a relationship moment. Your heavenly parent is trying to reach out to you, to talk to you, and your learning is your listening. And that listening is something which represents an embrace between us and him. And how much richer and how much more meaningful our davening is, and our learning is, and our mitzvahs, and our tefillin, anything and everything that we do which is a response to the Rabbi Michel's mitzvahs, is him reaching out to us because we have the locket that says we are his children. It's all about the relationship. If we get locked into something which is in our head without our hearts, if we don't have this very gifted musician to help us transcend our heads and get into our hearts, then we're losing the essence of what Torah and mitzvahs offer us. A moment of surrendering the limited and the finite to something which is boundless and infinite. We can become infinite in our connection with him. This time that you're spending in the yeshiva, that you're learning under your very gifted teachers, is time that you should not waste, and time that can build something that will escort you through life forever. If you use the time well, if you gather the skills that you need to be able to open up a Gemara, to open up a Shulchan Aruch, to open up a Chumash, to open up a Mesilas Yesharim, whatever it is, if you get that skill, you've opened up a great door, a great opening to the palace of the Melech Malchi HaMelachim, where he will receive each one of you, each one of us, with an open embrace. There's no nation so rich. There's no nation so privileged. One of the great Hasidic luminaries, the Beis Adam, once said, you know, we're supposed to be besimcha. We're supposed to be full of joy. He said, sometimes it's not so easy. He said, but when the Jew gets up in the morning and recites the bracha Shlo Yasani Goy, that is such an important bracha. A person should be able to dance and sing and rejoice all day by virtue of the fact that that the Bnei Shalom caused him to be a member of his family. In Yad Kislev, we celebrate the freedom of the Balatanya. One of the things that happened that's a matter of interest for all of us is that when one of the leading officers of the Tsar's army visited him in jail, so the Balatanya said to him, let me explain to you something about what happened with Adam and Chava. He said after the Chet, Hashem came to him and said to him, Ayeka, Adam, where are you? And he said to this person, everybody should be asking the question of Ayeka, of themselves, where are you? So where are we? Each one of us, where are we? Where are we in our connection? Where are we with our hearts? Where are we with the possibility of transcending our mortality, our limits, time and space, and open ourselves to something which is timeless and boundless, Ayeka? Where are you? That's a question that is very pertinent. I urge you to make the best use of your teachers, the best use of the opportunities to drink in this holy atmosphere, the air of Atzeno and Desha. And when ultimately you return to the various places from which you come, take it with you. Don't leave